When I handed in my notice at 54, everyone told me I was out of my mind. 10 years later, it was pretty clear the ones out of their minds were the people who stayed. That's not a story about being rich. It's a story about reading the signs. The four green lights almost nobody realizes they're already sitting at. You've been handed one script your entire working life. Grind until 65, hit some magic million. Then maybe you've earned the right to stop. Here's the truth no one tells you. Retirement readiness was never an age. It was never even a single number. It's a set of signals. And once four of them are lit, waiting longer isn't caution anymore. It's a bill you pay in your best years. There are four signs you can retire in your 50s, and most people miss the very first one. And there's a fifth, a hidden one, that quietly proves you were ready years ago. Every green light you ignore is a year you don't get back. The first sign is the one almost everyone gets wrong, because they're chasing the wrong number entirely. Ask most people how they'll know they can finally retire, and they say the same thing. $1 million. It's round, it's famous, and it's almost meaningless. Here's the number that actually matters. Not a million. 25 times what you spend in a single year. That's the whole rule drawn from decades of market history. Save 25 times your annual spending, draw down about 4% of it a year, and over a 30-year retirement that math held up through nearly every crash and bad decade the last century threw at it. Watch what that does to the magic million. If you spend $40,000 a year, your number lands right at $1 million. But that's a coincidence of your spending, not a magic figure. Quietly get that spending down to $32,000, and your number drops to $800,000. The finish line moves toward you, not away. That was the whole difference between David and Susan. David fixated on the round million and hit it at 58. Then he kept right on working, certain he needed more. Susan did the actual math on her actual life, saw she'd crossed 25 times her spending years earlier, and walked at 54. You're probably thinking 4% can't possibly be safe with the way markets swing. That rule wasn't built on the good decades. It was stress tested against the worst ones. Retiring straight into the 1970s, right before the crashes. Retire this early, though, and your money may need to last 35 or 40 years, not 30. So a lot of planners nudge that number down a touch, closer to 3.5%, to buy the extra runway. And an early retiree holds a lever a 65-year-old doesn't. The freedom to trim a little in a bad year and let the rest recover. The move, stop chasing a number off a billboard. Find yours. Your real annual spending times 25. That's the first green light. And a lot of people are already sitting at it without ever looking up, which leads straight to the second sign, the one that shrinks that number faster than any raise ever could. The second sign quietly does the heavy lifting. Because if your number is 25 times what you spend, then the fastest way to reach it isn't earning more. It's needing less. And the biggest lever there isn't your coffee or your vacations. It's your fixed costs. The bills that show up whether you're happy or not. The mortgage, the car payments, the debt. Run the math on just one of them. A $2,000 monthly mortgage is $24,000 a year. At 25 times, that single bill demands $600,000 of savings standing behind it, just to keep a roof over your head. Kill that mortgage and your whole number drops by $600,000 overnight. No raise on earth does that. That's David and Susan again. David still carried a mortgage, 2 car payments, and a lifestyle that climbed with every promotion, so his number stayed enormous, always just out of reach. Susan had knocked out the house and the debt by her early 50s. Her burn rate was small, her number was small, and she'd already cleared it without noticing. You might be thinking you'd have to live like a monk to manage that. That's the misunderstanding. This isn't about the dinners out or the trips, the things that actually make a life good. It's about the fixed bills quietly eating your freedom in the background. Kill the debt, not the joy. The move, hunt your fixed costs, not your fun. Every $1,000 a month you erase for good cuts your number by $300,000 and pulls your retirement years toward you. But there's one bill you can't simply pay off in your 50s. And for most people, it's the single biggest thing standing between them and an early exit. The third sign stops more 50-something retirements than money ever does. And it's almost always built on a myth. It's the bridge to Medicare. Retire before 65, and you're on your own for health insurance until it finally kicks in. Most people picture that number as impossible, $3,000 a month, and quietly decide they simply can't leave. Here's what almost no one runs the real numbers on. The marketplace prices your insurance off your taxable income. And an early retiree living mostly off savings often shows a very low taxable income on paper. Low income usually means real subsidies, though how big depends on that year's rules, and 2026 trims some of them back. Even so, for a lot of early retirees, the true cost still lands well under the number they were afraid of. That was David's favorite excuse. I'd love to go, but healthcare before 65 is a fortune. He never once pulled an actual quote. Susan did. She priced the bridge, saw the subsidized number, set aside a cushion for the years until Medicare, and crossed it. You might be thinking your health history makes you uninsurable. The marketplace can't turn you away and can't charge you more for it. That's the law. The very thing you're most afraid of was already solved for you. One honest caution. These rules shift, and the subsidy math has thresholds worth checking with a professional. But it's impossible is almost never the real answer. I never checked usually is. The move, get a real quote before you assume the gap is a wall. For most people, the healthcare bridge is shorter and far cheaper than the fear standing guard in front of it. Which brings us to the fourth sign, the only one that has nothing to do with a single dollar. The fourth sign never shows up on a spreadsheet, and it decides whether retiring in your 50s becomes freedom or the slowest fate of your life. Retire at 54, and you might have 35 years in front of you. That isn't a vacation. That's a second lifetime. And a second lifetime with nothing inside it isn't a reward. It's a void. The people who thrive after an early exit almost never leave toward nothing. They leave toward something, a project, a craft, a cause. People who expect them on a Tuesday. The paycheck had been quietly handing them purpose and structure for decades, and they made sure something was ready to take its place. David, even in the version where he finally does leave, had none of that. 30 years of pointing at a finish line and no idea what was on the far side of it. Susan retired to a workshop, a handful of people she mentored, and mornings that had a reason in them. You're probably thinking you'll figure that part out once you're free. Some people do, but the ones who thrive tend to know the answer before they hand in the notice, because a 30-year void is a terrible place to start improvising. The move, the fourth green light isn't in your account. It's a plain answer to one question: what will I get up for on a Tuesday morning? If you already have that answer, that light is green. And once all four are lit, there's only one thing left that can keep you at that desk. It's the fifth sign, the hidden one, and it isn't financial at all. Remember how this started? Someone quit at 54, everyone called her crazy, and 10 years later the crazy ones turned out to be the people who stayed. That someone was Susan. Here's what she understood that almost no one says out loud. Once your four lights are green, your number, your burn rate, your healthcare bridge, your reason to get up, there is only one thing left holding you at that desk. And it isn't a number. It's fear, wearing the costume of caution. That's the hidden fifth sign. If every green light is lit and you're still whispering, just one more year to be safe, that sentence itself is the sign. The math already cleared you. The fear is the last thing in the room still lying to you. And that fear has a price nobody prints on the invoice. Every year you wait for it to feel more certain. You hand over one of your go-go years, a year your knees still worked, your health still held, the window was still open. You're trading your single healthiest decade for a rounding error of extra safety you will never actually feel. That's the whole difference between David and Susan. David's lights were green for years. He'd hit the number, killed the debt, could have bridged the gap, and he kept waiting for a fifth light that was never going to turn any greener. He spent his best decade in a chair, guarding money he was too afraid to touch. Susan read the fifth sign for exactly what it was and walked. The four signs tell you that you can. The fifth one tells you the only thing left stopping you is fear. And fear has never once been a financial reason. Here's where that leaves you. The 4 lights aren't something you build for someday. For a lot of people watching this, 3 or 4 of them are already green, and they're sitting at the intersection, foot on the brake, waiting for the light to somehow turn greener than green. This week, run the 4 checks, honestly. Your real number, your annual spending times 25, your burn rate, what's left once the debt is gone, your healthcare bridge, a real quote, not a guess, and your reason to get up on a Tuesday. 4 questions, 1 honest hour, run your own numbers, and if it's close, run them past a fee-only planner before you hand in the notice. If those 4 come back green, then the only thing left is the 5th sign, and now you know it for what it is. Not caution, just fear, asking for one more year it is always going to ask for again. This isn't a dare to quit tomorrow. It's a nudge to stop assuming the answer is later when every signal you have is quietly saying now. Because the light was never going to get greener. Green already means go. It always did. I'll see you in the next